Subscribe to The Honest Critique for current affairs, movie, book, and product reviews. Also, make sure you press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the video series are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily represent those of The Honest Critique and its employees. The following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers. Viewer discretion advised.
So today we have among us Professor Ashok Swain. He is a professor of peace and conflict research, UNESCO chair of International Water Cooperation, and the director of Research School of International Water Cooperation at Uppsala University. He's an author as well, and I think he's written about, I know about like 10 books, right? 10 to 15, Professor?
Depends on how we can count it, but that's okay.
Edited too, the edited books as well. So, Professor, thank you so much for taking your time and coming on the show. It means a lot to host you today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure speaking to you all.
Yeah. Professor, generally when we have people who are general come on the television and have debates and all, we find the quality of conversation generally goes down. But when the same people comes to us and speaks to us privately and we have this conversation, they say that we have to adapt to a television environment to catch the audience attention. But that's the reason we have lesser audience, but try to have quality conversation. So probably we will be having a good quality conversation with you today as well, Professor.
Absolutely. Let's try to make it as normal as possible. We know that we are living in a difficult time, but that's the way. Take the advantage of it. So you can have 5 meetings in 5 different parts of the world sitting in your own room. I think that's also the good part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Swain, for taking the time out. One doesn't get usually so much time to talk to you in person. So I'll straight away shoot the first question. So considering all the involvement across the world and the very recent activities that have been going on, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has already warned the international community about the likely increase in social unrest and violent conflicts. So according to your personal opinion, what are the prospects of peace in a post-COVID world?
I think, the post-COVID world is still, we don't know, we haven't reached there, but it's a COVID-affected world, certainly, because I don't think we'll reach a point that when the COVID will completely go away. We have to learn to live together with COVID. The issue is that there have been hope in the beginning of this year that the world is suffering from a huge pandemic, which the world had never witnessed before. So this sort of pandemic will enable countries or the actors, those who are engaged in conflict, to come together because we have seen certain instances when there is a natural disaster that forces the leaders and the people to come and work together, forget the conflict, or try to sign some kind of negotiated agreements, that sort of things. But unfortunately, there have been, in spite of some people's hope, they usually didn't look at, this is never has happened in a certain way that all conflicts have gone away because of natural disaster. So there are always, the time and leaders, they need to take that advantage or they need to take that kind of occasion into their advantage and negotiate and find an agreement. But the way the world has been, divided before the COVID, the international community or the international organizations have become weaker. The multilateralism have really gone into toss, and there was a lack of complete leadership at the international level. So that is the reason when people or like UN Secretary General and others thought that, look, this is actually not going to lead to peace. These are going to lead to more conflicts. And I think that's where also I wrote a piece in April, I remember, in the Gulf News, which didn't make many of my colleagues happy probably, because I also said that look, the world is going to experience more and more conflicts because of the already divided world, the lack of leadership, and the kind of populist nationalists, those who are in ruling the large parts of the world, they will use this to divide the societies, divide the world for their own political interest. And I think it is important for their own political gains, the conflicts to become much more rather than conflicts to get to a negotiated settlement.
Yeah. Professor, so I actually went through that piece which you wrote in Gulf News, and you mentioned a very interesting anecdote of how the tsunami brought a pause to the conflict in Aceh, but it failed to do so in Sri Lanka. That time, as you have rightly pointed out, the global order was very different from the way it is right now. And we have seen an aggressive China right now, which wants to establish itself as a global power. How do you see the regional powers, especially in the South Asian, shaping up post a COVID world?
You know that China has been doing economically very well for some time, for a long period of time. China has become become an international power or superpower of some sort economically. China had a political power to some extent, not as much as the competing United States or the Western Bloc. But China used to be, as a comparative perspective, China was actually kind of a bit of under stress how to impose itself, how to bring out itself out of that, because China takes steps quite after a long consideration. China is not jumps into any kind of this kind of global power politics without thinking. China takes a long period of time. There is lots of discussion. They do have a leader, but authoritarian leader, but still that authoritarian leader is also governed through an authoritarian party or communist party, which has an internal mechanism which gets engaged in these long discussions and long planning. So I think this is when the COVID crisis came in. The China got an opportunity, like in 2008, to reassert itself, because there were various reasons. The reasons are because China could manage to get out of the pandemic quite faster because of the various control mechanism China has, the way the over presence of the state in the different parts of the country is. It's a very strong state control, so they could really manage it faster. While other countries, either Europe, United States, particularly failed in that way, that how to really control it, because there was, as I was mentioning before, there is a lack of global leadership, there was a lack of coordination, there are countries who are trying to blame each other, or rather trying to not see the problem are coming to them. So there were various missteps they took, which helped China again to reassert itself globally. While it did that globally, because it's realized that it has gained a power status, which is quite, in many ways, particularly in the militarily and economically, it started to look at it also in the side, which is neighboring countries. You see, the China has a number of territorial issues. We must realize, Hong Kong is there, the Taiwan is there, the Tibet is always hanging. All these provinces which are there. But China has never been, China has been always quite careful how to act on these territorial issues also. But the question is now what happened. I think that when in this scenario, China realized probably to keep the South China Sea side safe for itself, because China has developed very good working relationship with Russia. The other problem is coming from somehow the Korean side or Japanese side, the South China side. So that is the time when India started playing the game in a sense that trying to create an alliance of the US and Australia and Japan. China feels somehow that there is certain things coming up here. So China has already excellent relationship with Pakistan for a long period of time. China has developed a very good relationship with other Indian neighboring countries like Nepal and Bangladesh, and surrounded with Sri Lanka, and for some time also with Maldives. So I think this is the time China realized that to keep India in its own position or to teach a lesson to India, China went into a kind of act which will not be somehow not lead to a major war, but at the same time, it will show the domination, the military domination of China at the line of control. And I think this is a very planned way China entered into the Ladakh side to show that their presence is, they will show their presence, they will keep that presence in that way, that which India will have to certainly accept their domination in the region. And that helps to also coincide with India's miscalculation in the Kashmir. When the last year, when 5th of August, when the Article 370 was taken out, that led to all kinds of, what I thought, that really brought China and Pakistan closely together on the issue of Kashmir. China has been always before keeping at least in public neutral stance vis-a-vis Kashmir issue. It was giving a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. But after 5th of August 2019, China became a party, and China and Pakistan came together vis-a-vis India. And that really, because when it was India-Pakistan, India had diplomatic, political, military balance in its favor. But when China-Pakistan came together, that really created a certain kind of what you call power imbalance against India's favor. And then we miscalculated also in Nepal. The Nepal issue, of course, there have been issues between Nepal and China. There is territorial issues between China and Bhutan. China has also asked for the certain parts of Bhutanese territory now in their territory. But Nepal, India tried to put that country. I think what has happened, it's not a new problem with the India-Nepal relationship. India-Nepal relationship has gone up and down for many, many years. But I think India took Nepal granted for a long period of time. And I think it is very important to realize that time Nepal didn't have an option, but China provided the option to Nepal. And so the issue is, China took advantage, answering your question. China took the advantage of this kind of, while it is recovered from its pandemic crisis, it started restarting its economy in order, while South Asia, particularly India, is struggling through the pandemic at the same time, and its economy was in a bad shape before it became much worse because of the pandemic. China used its relationship with India's neighboring countries in a much more, because it developed the relationship with India's neighboring countries in a much better way. And I think all these have really played the role or to China showing its raw power in the region. And what we see in the eastern Ladakh, and also to some extent sometimes in the Arunachal Pradesh and the Sikkim border. This is just to show that, China has arrived. China is a bigger power. China is the big boss in the South Asia. That's what they want to show.
Now, Professor, since I wanted to bring about another aspect of how conflicts generally end. So I was reading this report by Rand, probably you might have come across as well. I think it's by Jonas and Levitsky, I think, the report. And they mentioned 4 ways in which conflicts or terrorism generally end, in which they have. And a very they have actually showed us only 7% of conflicts generally end by exerting pressure or dominance through security forces. Either it ends generally most of the time whether they reach the political goals, or at times when the government or the at the date able to make them sit at the negotiation table. Looking at the conflicts that's going around South Asia, uh, and especially when we have stopped having conversations with the other side, especially who we are fighting against. Uh, does exertion of force we have seen recently over the last few years that the government, especially at the day which we are having, believes in exerting power and dominance rather than having conversation. Do conflicts post this pandemic, since there's a communication gap as well, will tend to increase more because of this communication gap?
I think you see when a conflict reaches a mutually hurting stalemate, because there is a long time this conflict has been there. The two parties are got into this kind of conflict where they don't know how to come out of it, and the conflict has started hurting both the parties. There will be a possibility of negotiation starting, because they realize, look, this is the time we are not able to gain anything. We have been wasting so much of resources on this. Let's start talk together. I think that if you ask these questions, particularly India-Pakistan level, India-Pakistan conflict, particularly on the issue of Kashmir, has reached the mutual hurting stalemate for a long, long period of time, because Kashmir has been, a certain part has been with Pakistan, a certain parts with Kashmir, India, a section of it China has already taken a long time back. So it's in somehow there was no territorial gain. Both the countries were putting their measure of their army and military forces there, of killing each other, fighting 3-4 wars. It has not really led to the solve of the Kashmir conflict. It hasn't. So it has been going on since 1947, 1948, and it's continuing so long. So you expect the parties or the leaders, political leaders, to come down to negotiation table. Why it hasn't come? I think what is really worrisome is that there is a certain people, of course, any kind of negotiation you do, there will be certain troublemakers. They will try to, because they get benefits out of conflict, and they really don't want the conflict to come to a negotiation. What is happening is here that there are groups which have been quite, or particularly powerful groups in both the countries are getting benefits because of this conflict. If the conflict stays like this, that's why they are getting the benefits. And this is where the problem has come up. The problem has come up like a powerful military complex in even Pakistan, which benefits from this conflict to legitimize itself, to gain more power. In India, there has been also the military complex, bureaucratic complex. It's not as bad as Pakistan, but there are still some people who want to do this. What has happened in Indian side more and more in this, that the present political party in power, which gains politically, keeping the conflict alive. And I think this is where, if you have a gain of keeping the conflict alive, you don't really start the negotiation. Because if that makes you politically beneficial, you really don't know it. So I think the possibility will come when the political leaders will realize, by making peace will give them the political benefits, they will do so. If they think that they have to lose the political power because making peace, they will not do. So in this case, what is happening, as I see it, that the Indian political establishment is gaining political strength, keeping the conflict alive. And that's where you see the role of political leadership matters. Look at the conflict Ethiopia and Eritrea. You see, Ethiopia-Eritrea conflicts, the similar type of India-Pakistan conflict, but it's a new one. It's a 1990s. We got into 1940s. But in the 1990s, when Eritrea became a new country, they had a very good relationship for a few months or a year. And then they started fight long war. They were really sworn enemies. Suddenly, there is a change of leadership in Ethiopia. The guy went down there, without talking to anyone, got the negotiation, got the agreement, got the Nobel Prize. Of course, he is now engaged in a certain kind of dispute with within country and Egypt and Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan, but at least he made that peace deal, and that is working. Eritrean president was last month in Ethiopia, so Ethiopian Prime Minister, Eritrean president are doing well. So you could, that only could happen because of political will of this new leader in Ethiopia, who really sense that if he does that, it will give him the political legitimacy in the country. So I think what really holding us in India now to taking the call for negotiation, either Pakistan side was blocking it sometimes, or Pakistan blocks it because of its own interest, and the Indian side is blocking it now because of its own political interest. So you need to change the political landscape in a way that the political leaders will think it's a beneficial to negotiate rather than not to negotiate.
So, Professor, as you were mentioning about the Indo-Pak relation as well, so I'll just quickly jump into the fact of how we have treated multilateral bodies like SAARC. I think post 2016, we didn't have a single SAARC meeting. And we have seen a lot of smaller countries, especially who are dependent on India as a big brother, have started engaging in more bilateral ties with countries outside SAARC, like Sri Lanka with China, or Sri Lanka started bilateral relations with Pakistan as well. It has increased. How do you think conflicts, there are different conflicts which might come to a discussion table or negotiation table when we have multilateral bodies like this, and how does an absence of a body like SAARC affects in a post-COVID world?
Very important question. I think what really is, look at the SAARC. Unlike other, like European Union or Southeast ASEAN or the Organization of African Unit or African Union now they call it, and I think they have do not have a single country overtly so dominant in the geographically, strategically, economically, and politically and militarily. The way India is overtly dominant in the South Asian countries. What is South Asia? South Asia is, now Afghanistan came in, but before when it started, India versus Pakistan, India versus Nepal, India versus Bhutan, India versus Bangladesh, India Maldives, or India Sri Lanka. Because they all have land or water boundary or border with India, no one else. So they have been all bilateral relationship. Only India is the central force, which was in the SAARC relationship. What India realized, because of its domination and because of its conflict with Pakistan, India was always think it will have that dominant position within SAARC in that way. And I think this is where the challenge came in when the China came in. The China's position really threatened the India's continued domination in the South Asia in the beginning. Because South Asia, if you look at it, is a Bangladesh and Nepal, they had first wanted it. Bangladesh is president that time, and then the Nepal into the Kathmandu, the SAARC headquarters. So these are the smaller countries, those who really wanted to do this, get this. And I think this is where the India's position within the SAARC got challenged because India's domination within the SAARC got weakened because of the China's increasing power. And China, which was not playing politics that much in South Asia, because of its increasing strength, increasing global power status, it will do because it's a neighbor. China is Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Bangladesh. These are all Chinese neighbors. So China will always try to keep the better relationship. Indian policymakers should have realized very before that once China becomes active in South Asia, we need to remain careful about it. But that was not. Unfortunately, we didn't play the SAARC politics well. Then what we did, India started to keep the Pakistan out of it. Okay, that's also a good idea. If you think that it's always getting in the India-Pakistan problem, then start a proper multilateral unit. Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh and India. There are 4 countries. There at least you could stand. And there is a lot of internal, there is a specific issues, a number of water issues, migration issues, transportation issues, economic issues where you could collaborate. But that hasn't been. And I think China has been again, I think what has happened now, we've gradually realizing that China has taken a dominant position in these countries like Nepal, Bhutan, particularly Nepal and Bangladesh. We are trying to move back to rectify to some extent, but I think it's a bit late. And we are also following the same ideas what China has been, because China has done. China has, of course, acted a bit nicely because China has to take this friendship from the Indian side. So China has tried to act smart. China act nicely. China giving some more money for the infrastructure, for the development. We are trying to compete China in that way. Like we are trying to give some money or giving a submarine or giving this, because we cannot compete China in that way. We need to find ways where we have our strength. India has its strength, that India can use that strength to develop the relationship with Nepal, Bangladesh, and Bhutan, Sri Lanka, other way than the China, because we are competing on China's strength, means giving some kind of economic benefits or some kind of military sources, rather than looking at our cultural link, our mutual respect, the people-to-people link, the party-to-party links. We need to get that, and also the way look at it, all these countries are indirectly also threatened by China. So Nepal, there are some territorial issues. Bhutan, there are some territorial issues. Bangladesh is dependent on the Brahmaputra River. China is taking away lots of water or the building dams on the Brahmaputra River. So there are a number of factors which really make them vulnerable to China's domination outside. So if India can really bring these countries together, play a multilateral, create a multilateral forum, that will provide India much better strength to address China threat and also provide a multilateral role in the South Asia. And then you can start working to Pakistan towards your side. But if you want to keep Pakistan out for some time, also do that, but at least play with Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka in a much nicer way.
Okay. So, sir, you have said that the growth of India's domination has been substantially very low in the SAARC community, while China has taken a dominant position in developing relationships with these nations. And you also rightly pointed out that India has the strength to build the relationship to compete with China's strength, right? So in what way do you see the policymakers of our country pursuing these goals in terms of building people-to-people contact or party-to-party contact, in terms of regaining the same trust, regaining the same mutual trust, or regaining the same hegemony in the SAARC community?
I think what has happened that we have been rather very short-term oriented, very goal-oriented, immediate goal-oriented, trying to making it a very transactional relationship with these countries immediately to see that they will, if we support them, they will come back to support them. Then also to see that, to see that India is a big country, large country, economically it is hugely dominant. You can't expect that kind of reciprocation from these countries that way you think that you can give. So I think it's a somehow, first of all, there needs to have a mutual respect and very little of bullying and also to blackmailing. Look at the present relationship with India and Nepal. India and Nepal, when you build a road, and Nepal is asking to negotiate with you for a long period of time, why you refuse to talk? Because this, of course, there are issues which we have, but the India-Nepal relationship, if any country where India can really, the present regime can really build good relationship with Nepal. And I know that in 2014, when I was in Nepal, almost all the Nepalis were so happy with the Modi's victory. And suddenly changed in 2015. So you see that there is a huge political goodwill was there for the present regime that time. So, but that has not really been, cultivated. So similarly, Bangladesh, there is a pro-Indian regime is there for a long period of time. So, but at the same time, you need to play a balancing role, because India should not be confined to a particular regime or a particular party in these countries. India should use its different political connections with the different political parties. So it should be in partition, above partition level. It should be somehow not transactional. It will be somehow long term, because imagine if India wants to or aims to become a superpower. A country, not only forget about superpower, I mean, to country with certain kind of global significance and regional security and stability, you need to have good neighbors, at least many of them. You can't afford to have enemies all around. So I think it's very important for India, for its own security, for its own stability, for its own global influence, need to put much more emphasis on the regional relationship, rather than spending time or spending resources in relationship building in so-called, the quad or triad or whatever the way. You can do that thing, but at least you should emphasize the relationship, try to build in a long-term cooperation with the neighboring countries.
And the way India handled it, it was too late for them. And the way they exerted power on Nepal, even a common Nepali people, the Nepali people who was its normal citizens who had nothing to worry. I mean, they used to get their like a lot of jobs as well from India. Got angry with India because of its fuel ban and the other different things that India exerted pressure on. Did India lost Nepal there? Or or should I just go a little bit back and say when a little bit forward and say when India didn't support KP Oli for the election, which was the point we lost Nepal?
I think you see the Indian relationship with Nepal has been quite very insensitive many times before. It's not new. It didn't. I think I'm not a fan of Modi, but I'm not going to blame Modi for that everything. The problem lies for long period of time going into the kind of way India has treated Nepal. Because even Rajiv Gandhi time, there was a blockade as well. When I was a student, I remember that there was a blockade. After that, there has been, of course, up and down in the relationship. We go back to the agreements which have signed on the many river agreements, which has been a very problematic. And Nepalese always think that the Indians have not been respected them. Indians have been treating or exploiting their natural resources, all kinds of things. And I think that's a long history. But still, what happened in 2014, as I was mentioning, there was a possibility of a new idea or the new hope in Nepal that because of there is a Hindu group has come to power. They had I remember Modi went to visit to Nepal after visiting Bhutan. He got a welcome like any, as if a royal, much more than a royal income. Welcome. He got there. So there was a lots of hope there. I think in October, November 2015, I visited Nepal. I was going around Nepal for some other works when Nepal was in the middle of this, unofficial blockade. And you can see that how people have become so upset and angry vis-a-vis India in a very short period of time, and particularly angry with Modi. Because I think they had a lot of hope that time, and this is the time when they really felt that. And this was also, the way also we mismanaged giving aid and others in the after the earthquake in Nepal, because the earthquake was very, few months before, then this blockade came. So the whole country was really devastated with this kind of wage. So I think it's a somehow the relationship, what the basic relationship has been, the problem is that we think that we can push Nepal to submission all the time because Nepalis don't have the choice. Okay, that's I see that because we see that because in this power game, because there are this China power game has been going on, India-China power game in Nepal has been going on for some time. And India had an advantage because China was not that much near to the Nepal's border before. So Nepal was politically, economically, geographically was much more within the India's influence. So India was trying to put this pressure for the Nepal to fall in line. Because we could change the regime, we could push the regime to do things before. But that has not been possible anymore. Because China is now, when there is a political crisis in Kathmandu, China is playing the role what the Indian ambassador used to play the role. Because they have now become powerful in a sense. China has started or reached all, Chinese railway construction has reached almost the border of Nepal. They can easily come to Kathmandu. So China has resources. China can really deliver things. And I will give you one example that when India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited in 2014, he promised a headquarters for the police, Nepal police. Similarly, when G came, and he also promised a nice headquarters for their military police of some sort. 5 years passed, India has not able to deliver that headquarters. After 2 years, China gave the key to the headquarters to the police and military police headquarters to Nepal. So China could really do things in a very faster way. China has the resources, and the way China operates. China follow up things. So I think what has happened in this case, our old game of pushing Nepal to submission is not working anymore, because China has provided the alternative. So we need to find a new way out.
So, in particularly when you talked about India and Nepal relationship, and you also spoke about the wave of nationalism post 2014 and how it has changed kind of dynamics in the region. So the growth of nationalism, how is it going to impact globalization after this pandemic ends, probably?
I think there have been a number of challenges to the global multilateralism, even before the pandemic came. There has been some success stories that had happened recently in many ways, like, if you mention the climate agreement, there has been agreement on migration, global agreements. There have been a number of positive issues before, but still, the US has really not played the role which was up to Obama administration was playing. That's a multilateralism, global institutions supporting the regime to work on these issues. And now look at it when we are in the middle of the health crisis, USA withdrawing from the WHO. So these are the things which had really a problem of the US administration for 4 years, particularly the Trump administration, has really ruined that kind of global, and he also withdrew from the Paris Agreement. And so this is somehow we are expecting, at least if there is a change of regime, which no one knows, this result is still hanging. Hopefully, if there is a change of regime takes place, in the US, that might push for certain kind of, again, reviving the global multilateral approach to address this issue. Because you need a leadership, particularly by the free world, to lead the process. No one because in Europe is not, because Europe is too divided to take that leadership role. So it's the United States still has the possibility to take the leadership role of providing a global platform or a global structure of addressing not only this pandemic, but other economic issues which have come up, the climate change issues which have come up, the various conflicts which have come up. We talked about India, China, India, Pakistan, or the Azerbaijan, Armenia. There is a Ethiopia, Sudan, Egypt. I mean, which president? Trump last week was talking about blowing up the dams of Ethiopia by Egypt. You don't really, the leaders of the United States should not get into this kind of loose talk about starting a war. So I think what is happening now, if lots of things happens, if there is a change of administration in the US, that will really probably, not really, that will most likely help to get the global process move in a direction which we probably need the countries to come together. But if it doesn't, if the 4 more years of Trump, then we are witnessing a world which will be again further divided. The populist nationalists will gain further strength, and there will be no global structure, or the global institutions will be much more weaker to address the issue which the world is facing, particularly on the issue of health issue of climate change, issue of economic, economy is in a very, not only in India, globally, economy is in a terrible shape. All the countries are going in the negative growth, except China. So you need to realize that we need this kind of things. And there is a war coming up in all kinds of places, which the world war are coming up, and also democracies are falling in almost all of the world. So I think it's somehow, I think we are doing this interview today, but I would have probably preferred to give you a much better answer to see what it would be after seeing the US result. So there's a lot depends on how US result is going in that direction.
Since you mentioned about about this before, and I would just want to bring about the multilateral aspect once more, of how US wants to maintain its superiority in the world, but it also is threatening to leave World Health Organization. It's not a part of UNESCO or the Human Rights Council of Geneva. At one place, when you were threatening to leave organizations, and you are also scared of the Chinese hegemony and Chinese taking over this organization, how can you balance the two? You cannot have the both ways, right?
Absolutely right. You are absolutely right. And I think this is what many of the Americans realize this, except the president and its supporters. They realize. They look at the US relationship with the Europe. It's absolutely pathetic now. US, Europe had a long standing, particularly in the post Second World War period, a very definite relationship of military alliance and political alliance. But that has gone, nowhere now. Everybody, because the way the accusations, the kind of languages which the US president uses against the European ally, it has become much more complicated, much more problematic. So the US is, or particularly the President Trump administration, has really messed up with all its individual allies, and at the same time, the withdrawing from the various international organizations. It is not treating well the UN. It has come out of UNESCO. It has come out of WHO. It has come out of the Paris Agreement. It is not paying well the whatever is supposed to be payment. So all kinds of things which are happening is absolutely going towards that. And at the same time, China and Russia, particularly China, is really getting strength. China has gained its political influence not only in Asia, but also Africa and Latin America, quite a big way. China has a huge support in Africa politically as well as in the Latin America. So I think it's the Trump administration, by withdrawing from the multilateral organization, Trump administration, by insulting its own allies, mistreating its own allies, has given a better possibility for the China to get its position much faster than what it was China even had imagined. And the China-Russia axis is developing much more forcefully, and America is finding it very difficult to address this. So I think it's if there is again the 4 more years, we will be in much more trouble. But you see that there is a need now to change the course, because look at the climate agreement or the Paris Agreement. Though in 2017 Trump decided to withdraw from it, but officially to withdraw in 2020 because it has to be taken some time so to withdraw now. If the new administration can brought back that agreement, brought back US to the next year, so it is not a big loss. We can come back to the system. So there is a need for that if it's within a year or a half a year, US is back on track. Probably they can recover to some extent. But if another 4 more years, I don't see where China will get a much more empty space and much more possibility to establish itself as a much more politically powerful force in the global arena than what it is now, and the US will be withdrawing from the global scale much more than what it has been now.
So, on exactly on the same lines, what you pointed out, the America is finding difficult to address and there is a certain requirement to change the course of the narrative, which is driving the global hegemony. So, you also suggested that America should have provided a global structure in this post-pandemic world. So, are you also implying at the same time that global hegemony should remain with the United States? Or should we also welcome other actors to come at the same time? And one small point I'll also put across, sir, that while the administration is in a shift, and while we are talking, the US elections are being concluded. So what do you expect from the coming administration if there is an administrative change? How can they compensate? How can they bridge the gap in developing the global structure that you just discussed about?
You see, there is a need for of course, a very democratizing principle of global structure. There is we have been talking, the world is talking about taking new members, changing the power structure in the Security Council, create a UN a much more democratic body than what it pretends to be. There are lots of things. I mean, that's a bigger debate. Of course, if in a situation with democratic decision-making power at the global level, there is no doubt about that. But given the situation, given the present power equation, and given the kind of crisis the world is going through, if you want me to select between either the US-led kind of a democratic force, free democratic force, or China-led authoritarian communist regime force, I will always prefer a US-led kind of global power structure where we do have democracy, we do have liberal values, we do have, of course, there are problems in the United States. I completely agree with that. But when we are looking at a comparative perspective, it's either or, because we don't have the possibility to lead to a democratic multilateral structure where everyone has a cooperative, collaborative voice. In this case, I want the US leadership rather than Chinese leadership of the world. And that is because of the democratic value, the values for the free world, the values of secularism, all these things, which I think are the values of respect for the human rights, you name it. And these are the things which you want a democratic, secular power structure to lead the world rather than a communist, closed, authoritarian regime to lead the world. So there is no doubt about that. But Of
That's
course,
right.
if I am given the possibility, I want it will be supposed to be democratic, collaborative. Everybody should have equal voice.
So, Professor, let me come back to how you mentioned about United Nations before. How do you see the trust factor in bodies like United Nations post the pandemic, especially with the way the World Organization has dealt with the pandemic? Do you think there will be trust deficit in these multilateral bodies, and more sub-regional bodies like Asian will take over such larger multilateral bodies?
I don't know whether this. Of course, there have been some regional organizations like ASEAN or African Union. They have become European Union. European has weakened to some extent because of the migration issue and also because of the COVID issue. But there hasn't been African Union, Europe, ASEAN. They have become quite strong. They're there, or that they will take off the role of the multilateral organized, the UN. UN has lost quite a lot of relevance. Particularly, UN has not only failed to give a leadership at the COVID time, but I think UN has also failed to give a leadership in the crisis which India, China taking place, or the crisis Armenia, Azerbaijan was taking place, or the kind of violent conflicts which is taking place in Saudi Arab areas, or the Middle East, and also now we see North Africa. So there are a number of ways. The UN has really lost to some extent, and that is most likely the real reason is that there is a very big division within the Security Council permanent members. And the Security Council permanent members, when there is a lack of directions, particularly at the American side, and when the American side has become a directionless from that side of the story, then the other side, China and Russia, have become quite, they don't need to really play anymore any kind of role. They just need to stay quiet. The UN remain quiet. And the UN has remained quiet for all these kind of reasons. And also the way everybody target, particularly the US targeted WHO and the issue of COVID, that has really brought, and also, as you mentioned, all kinds of multilateral discussions that the present Trump administration has really ruined it. So the question is whether the smart regional bodies are opting or co-opting sooner. They will probably go into this. But I sincerely hope, even if there is regional organizations are good enough, so some of them regional organizations will be good enough, there is a reason for the global organized institutions, particularly multilateralism at the global level, needs to be strengthened and need to work. Because the regional, if you look at the migration, if you look at the COVID pandemic, if you look at the economic crisis, if you look at the wars even, they are not limited within the region. They all have the international global character. You need the global institutions to play the multilateralism role much more strongly, even if, or that will only facilitate even a stronger regional organization. It's not either or. Stronger regional organizations are needed, but not at the expense of really strong multilateral institutions.
So, Professor, you pointed out some administrative fault lines of the Donald Trump regime, but few things have been very highly hailed while he maneuvered his way through making peace in Middle East, probably cracking a peace deal between restoring diplomatic relationships between Israel and UAE and other nations with Israel, other Middle Eastern Arabic nations with Israel. At the same time, contemporary to these things, he have been very successful in maneuvering his way through the Afghanistan-based process, trying to pull the troops out. While the situation in Afghanistan still remains very, very fragile, very volatile, and the future looks bleak, what is your observation of Afghanistan in a post-US US withdrawal?
Yeah, I think what you agree. I agree with you that Trump has not started a war. As we have been seeing, many of the American presidents have started a war. So we were expecting Trump to start a war, but he did somehow think North Korea is a success, but that's a very different thing. He also thinks the Middle East, particularly in spite of the declaring Jerusalem, putting the U.S. embassy in Jerusalem, all these things which has been somehow not led to war. The relationship with Israel and UAE, which mentioned, and also now recently taking away the restriction on Sudan, which is he did few things, and also the conflict with Iran, which was really going to lead to a war, but at least sometime the sanity, some sort of sanity prevailed, and it didn't really lead to a full-scale war. And then the Afghanistan. I think what has been that all these negotiations, agreements which he has been signed or which he has taken in, that has been much more personal based. It has not been really on the basis of engaging institutions, engaging diplomatic means. These are all on the basis of the rulers forced, and these rulers in sometimes are going through a very serious legitimacy crisis. Even the Israeli prime minister, North Korean president, or North Korean whatever he is, the North Korean leader. So these are the people, those who are with his personal relationship, is trying to some kind of bringing deal. But it's good to sign deals, but the deals should be very diplomatically negotiated. Otherwise, if there is no ownership at the institutional level on these deals, then there is a probably possible withdrawal from that agreements afterwards by the countries. So it just looks the kind of things which he has done. It hasn't. The process hasn't been like, if you take the Gandhian principle, it's not the end result. It means also the process means. I think his process has been quite problematic. Coming back to Afghanistan issue, if you look at the Afghanistan, what he has been doing, that it's a of course, the Taliban was the only other foreign regime which what do you call it, advocated for the Trump re-election after the Modi. So that was, Modi was calling for the Trump re-election, and then the Taliban, which of course they denied Taliban's endorsement. But the ways, if you look at it, in one of the major areas of the discontent in the Pakistan is becoming a much stronger player in Afghanistan, while United States kept, or the India, which has been the Pakistan's real main concern in Afghanistan, has withdrawn or gone to very, very marginal role. There is no role now, India's role. India had invested quite heavily in Afghanistan for its own security infrastructure. So I think India has been kept out. In Afghanistan, Pakistan has become again a major player. Taliban is gaining the strength like anything. So once the American force or the international forces, once the things becomes a bit normal, it's a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan will take place. And there the role of Pakistan will be back into the same way as before. Pakistan will gain much more strength in Afghanistan as well as China. So I think China has become even a major player in Afghanistan compared to India. So I think it's in a scenario which is developing in Afghanistan. Afghanistan scenario is actually creating more and more problems. I don't see it's a getting into any kind of peaceful, democratized, proper regime or proper democratic structure putting in place in Afghanistan, a stable regime. I don't think so. I think it's of course U.S. troops will be there, but this will be again possibly most likely we are back to the 1990s again there.
Okay, Professor. I had one more follow-up on Afghanistan, but I think you will be late, so let's just go to Kashmir directly. what India has done in the last 1 year, and with the arrest of the political leaders and kind of ending the political climate that's there in the valley. So we had A.S. Ziblatt Saab, who was basically the former raw chief, and he was telling of how if we remove the political climate from the valley, there will be more black flags coming in. There will be more people who goes into the conflict. And we have seen an aggressive policy of the government, this government especially, with Operation All Out and trying to focus attacks the terrorists. But can we really go forward and win the trust of the people when we don't actually speak to them, when we don't talk to them? Can we really solve the conflict without getting the trust of the common people? And after that August 5th, 2019, do you think we can actually bridge that gap?
No. You need to, because I think, of course, Kashmir was not a very safe haven before 5th August 2019. Kashmir had an issue. Kashmir has been going through issues up and on and off for a long period of time. It has become much more severe since 2016. There are other actors. I mean, nobody can take out that the role of Pakistan plays, the role within the Kashmir. There has been a huge dissenting forces have been always there. So these are the facts. But the question is, this is a population which has been going through the military kind of domination for a long period of time. They do have lots of human rights issues. What India had done had actively created kept a political process, because it's we are not going back to the history. If we're going back to the history, we see that the kind of role at the time of the negotiation or the accession and all these things, that's a very long history. We don't need to even go back to this history. But there are certain ideas were there when there is a regime which is or there is a place where there is people are asking for self-determination. You are supposed to negotiate with them. You are trying to give them some things where you might negotiate. You don't take out whatever the small things they do have. The Article 370 didn't have a much significance practically. There are a few things on the land issue and other things, but I think the overall it was Delhi which was running the place, but that was a very huge significance emotionally, and for also to India to argue its case in the international fora or among other Islamic countries or any among countries those who are questioning that, hey, we are treating this region as a special region. Of course, we treat many regions special region. This is not the only region we treat special region, but Kashmir is a special case, or it has been a special case. But we took that out. With the Article 370, we had invested for the last 70 plus years with creating a certain groups within Kashmir, those who are, so we call them mainstream leaders. They were asking for more power. They were asking for the military or the security forces less, kind of whatever the role or the torture, whatever they can say. But I think they were actually they were part of the so-called mainstream ruler. Tell me, after this, and these are the investment has been done for 70 plus years to create these mainstream forces. And we certainly made them anti-national, and they need to take against India position for their political survival. Even if they want to support India, they cannot support India because of what has happened in Kashmir. So I think you cannot oppress a place of that kind of nature. Look, Kashmir is not in the middle of Madhya Pradesh, okay? Kashmir is a place which is surrounded by countries like China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. dealing on a territory which is not only disputed, but also very strategically and problematically located. You need to act smart to deal with it. By doing that, taking our Article 370, and not refusing to negotiate with the people, not refusing to negotiate with Pakistan, creating this kind of union territory of Ladakh, and as I was mentioning before, making China as a party to the Kashmiri conflict directly. And Kashmir conflict, making a party to China means you are bringing China and Pakistan together. So what we lost, we have lost our leaders, the Indian leaders, political leaders, mainstream leaders in Kashmir. We have lost whatever limited support we had among the Kashmiri people in Kashmir. We have lost our arguments in favor of Kashmir or our ownership of Kashmir among the international community. We lost our balance of power, which was in our favor to Pakistan, because we brought China to Pakistan's side directly in this conflict. So I think there has been a number of losses has been done, but that's of course politically beneficial for the present Prime Minister and the regime. There is no doubt about that, because it helps him politically in India. But it has really created a major problem for the Indians, and it is a long time problem. How it needs to be done, I think immediately they need to start to revert back the process, but I don't think the present regime will ever revert back the process to give back to the Article 370. Hopefully there is a new regime when it comes, it might bring back a certain kind of Article 370 in a different form, start the democratic process in Kashmir, start negotiating with Pakistan. These are the three basic things to be done if we need to have a manageable working, business as usual approach in Kashmir.
All right. So this will be one last concluding question. You pointed out very interesting things, sir, that if we want to have a peaceful Kashmir, if we want some sort of conclusion, a peaceful conclusion in Kashmir, we must engage with the Kashmiri population. We must bridge the gap. We must remove the alienation and connect the mainstream political participants and actors to New Delhi and construct a bridge. You also pointed out to engage in a dialogue with Pakistan. I'm sure people sitting back at home will not totally agree with this. How would you respond to this? How do you think talking to Pakistan will be relevant in this case? Because as it is very widely discussed by the right wing of India that Kashmir is totally an internal matter, but talking to any other external actor is none of the business and is not in the best interests of our country or our national security. So how will you explain that Pakistan's engagement, a diplomatic engagement or a track 2 or a track 3 undiplomatic engagement with India will help resolve Kashmir?
You see, Kashmir is
Professor,
never an internal matter. Sorry?
I'm just saying, if I what Siddhant said, I'll just add it. And every time we actually have a dialogue with Pakistan on Kashmir, we just brought out the Balochistan angle, especially in this context as well. You have seen the land reform as well, what Pakistan has been doing. So our counter argument always gets restricted to what we have done in Kashmir, or you're doing the same thing in Balochistan as well. So you don't have the moral authority to go out in international forum and talk about Kashmir.
And especially with the land law, I mean, I just returned from Kashmir 2 days back, and the environment there is that there is a lot of alienation because of the recent land law which was passed. And it is not just the Article 370 episode which happened last year on 5th August. It has been continuous backfires happening again and again. And yeah, that is one problem. So yes, sir, Professor, all to you.
Yeah, I think this is a continuous process, but I think, going to this, that I will go quickly. That yes, the Kashmir. They say that Kashmir is an internal issue. Kashmir is not an internal issue. It's never been an internal issue. Kashmir is divided. Has been taken by parts of it has been with Pakistan, parts of it with China, and it has been always coming now regularly in the UN Security Council. It has been always discussed outside. even India's Prime Minister's best friend Trump has also asked to negotiate, or I've been telling him that he is going to negotiate. So this has never been an internal issue. So I think it's an illusion people think in India that Kashmir is an internal issue. Second thing is, what you do in Kashmir, you do in Balochistan, that's not the right answer. India looks itself as a democratic, secular country. India thinks itself as a moral power in the world. India doesn't need to compete Pakistan on what India does. If Pakistan does that, really justify what India does. That's absolutely, this is absolutely nonsense when somebody in India says that this is what we do justifiable because that's what Pakistan does. I think these are the most anti-national statement I can come across of thinking a secular democratic country which imagines itself to be a moral power tries to see and try to justify it by a country which you tend to project everybody. It's a theocratic country. It's a country which supports terrorism. I think this is absolutely nonsense in saying that kind of justification who gives. The question is why you will not talk to Pakistan. If you don't talk to Pakistan, whom you will talk to? Will you talk to Japan about Kashmir? Or will you talk to Kazakhstan about Kashmir? You have to talk to Pakistan about Kashmir because Pakistan is a major. Yes, please, Siddhant. You want to say something?
Sir, the counter argument here builds that when we try to initiate a dialogue, there is a backstabbing that happens from the Pakistan angle when we talk. So, for example, while we were talking once in 2000, then Kargil, when Vajpayee ji came and then Kargil happened, something was going on. Then Parliament attack happened, something was going on. Then the Air Force station in Jammu and Kashmir, I'm forgetting the name. That happened. And yet we have scars of a lifetime from Pakistan. So here the peace process kind of the idea of engaging with Pakistan on diplomatic terms kind of gets fabricated, sir. So what would you like to say in that particular manner?
So you talk to with whom you negotiate with your perceived enemy because you are trying to bring a peace. Okay. And always in a conflict, in a negotiation, there is always a backlash by certain actors. There is no negotiation has gone on smoothly ever. It has to be taken the possibility of these kind of actors, those who are we call it spoilers. Okay, will be always spoilers in the negotiation process. When a negotiation is taking place, a leadership has to be in both sides to address the issues, problems coming with the spoilers. There will be some kind of terror attack in certain kind of airfields or certain kind of, but that happens anyway all the time because as I mentioned before, there are always groups and institutions in both the countries are benefiting of keeping the conflicts alive. So when they see a negotiated end coming to a negotiation is taking place, and if it will lead to a pursued resolution of the conflict, they are going to lose. So there will be always some spoiler activity. That's where the need for the political will is important. Why Vajpayee took the bus ride to Lahore, even after the Kargil? Was it stupid? Why Manmohan Singh was negotiating with a military general? Was it stupid? They are not stupid people. Why now we say that America is negotiating with Taliban? If America can negotiate with Taliban, what really stops India to negotiate with Pakistan? So you see, you negotiate with your adversaries to make peace. If you don't talk to them, then what else to how you negotiate? And you have to negotiate with Pakistan, address the Kashmir issue. You have to find ways that how there is a political will must be there to add to. It will be a long process. It's not a new conflict. And this conflict, I understand this conflict has a serious problems. It's not easy to negotiate. It's not easy to find an agreement. But if you don't talk, you will never get an agreement. And so you need to talk. That will, and another thing which is always important is you need to create a discourse in the countries much more calmer that the political leaders can able to negotiate. If we keep on saying that we will keep bombing Pakistan, we will keep nuking Pakistan, we will keep, Pakistan, we will call them all kinds of names, we'll send everybody to Pakistan, you are not really going to, there is on the same side, Pakistan side, the same thing. So both sides need to desecuritize to as much as extent, depoliticize the issue, give the political leadership must come out, try to negotiate, because it's the only country you have to negotiate on, because that's the other part of the territories in there with the hand, and to find a solution. And this is not going to be a easy solution, but there is nothing, because you have fought 3 wars. Still, Kashmir situation is not solved. Kashmir, part of Kashmir is with Pakistan. So what else is left? If you are saying that negotiation has not been succeeded, have the wars have been succeeded? No. So why you go to war? Why not to negotiate?
Yeah. Thank you, Professor, for such like well-framed answers. So, like a lot of the people who are watching it probably will get a lot of insights from throughout the interview, which we have a discussion. But Professor, before I let you go, this is a regular task which we give to all our guests, because since it's all the students who watch it. Any 5 books that you want all the students who are watching this interview to read?
It's 9 o'clock.
Any books?
Probably any 5 books, probably on peace and conflict.
Yeah, I think that there will be quite. I need to tell that because I don't remember the names quite immediately. But if you want, I can send you the 5 books list,
okay,
which
Professor,
you can use.
Sure.
Because I will be not able to tell their title, as fast as possible, or to tell them correctly. So I would be better to send you the names and the authors' names, then you can give it to students. They can easily find it out.
Okay. I'll put it in the description box for YouTube for people who want to go to that. But thank you so much, Professor. But thank you, Professor, for taking your time and giving us. Probably we exceeded the time, and I saw from the behind the window pane of yours. It was afternoon some point of time, and now
it just got dark.
Yeah, the winter has come in, so it's. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's nice to
Thank you, sir.
Take care. Bye bye.